Reno Air Racing Association is going to probably have to have a new name. We're going to talk about on this episode of Taking Off. Hi, welcome to the Reno Air Racing event. It's the last one. I'm Dan Milliken. We are here at the Flying Eyes booth. I have with me the Chief Operating Officer of the Reno Air Races. Tony, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here and for inviting me to come out and talk with you today.
You bet. There's a lot going on here. Here we are, the last Reno Air Races. But this is the last of many. A lot of history was made here. Run me back through how you guys started and how you got to this point.
Absolutely. So many know there was no racing for Unlimiteds from the 40s through the mid-60s when this started. Bill Stead and others out here in Reno, they wanted to get it going again. So they got the first Reno Air Races started out at Sky Ranch for its first couple years in 1964, and then in 66 moved here to Stead. Been here ever since.
You guys have had highs, lows, everything in between. Take me through, what do you think have been the biggest highs of the Reno Air Races?
Wow, the biggest highs of the Reno Air Races. There's so many. It's kind of hard to narrow it down to one or two or three. You know, back at the beginning there were three classes. It was just Formula, Biplane, and Unlimited. And then couple years later, the T6s were added. 20 years later, the Sport, and then a few years later, the Jet. And now, of course, Stoll Drag is the newest one recently. There's so many highs and lows. It's hard to even, it's hard to say. You know, there's from a racing standpoint, there's been incredible races over the year. The recent one that I can think of was 2017, the last time we had Strega and Voodoo out here together on the course, and that was pretty amazing. I mean, a photo finish, you know, Jay Consalvi overtaking Steve-O on that last lap to win it was pretty amazing. But there's a lot of great things that have happened out here.
To continue to put you on the spot, your favorite plane that comes to mind, the first plane that comes to mind of the Reno Air Races?
I'm not allowed to pick a favorite, but I will say that when I'm asked the first plane that comes to mind, Rare Bear does come to mind first. So I can't say that that's my favorite plane, but when somebody says plane, and you know, that's the one that comes to mind. Okay. Love those Bearcats. They're just so big and just you know, tough looking. I like those planes. They're cool.
All right, now we reach today. You guys are having the final Reno Air Races. What happened?
So as far as where we find ourselves now, the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority made the decision that they wanted to sunset the event here at Reno Stead, and you know, through some discussions, and we had hoped we'd be here longer. We know that there's been some plans to develop the airport for a long time, but it seems like they're pretty far off from actually happening. So we thought we had quite a ways to go. But ultimately, that was the decision that they made, and we talked with them, and you know, we hoped we'd be here a little bit longer, but it didn't work out. And you know, at the end of the day, it's their airport, so we respect the decision. They worked very well with us to make sure that we had the most successful event we can this year, and they've been a good partner. So that's where we're at, and now we're working on the future. But first, we're going to have a pretty incredible event this week.
You are working on the future. A lot of people thought, okay, this is it for the air races. They're done forever, but they're not. So I would imagine as soon as the announcement was made that this was going to be the last one, that your phone would ring off the hook with all the different venues around the country that would love to host the air races. Where are we at on that?
Yeah, so a lot of people did assume that would be the end, but when we knew that this was going to be the last racing event here, we immediately as a board started discussing what are we going to do? You know, do we think we can carry this on? Well, yeah, we think it's worth saving. It's special. It's unique in the world, and the family that brings this together, just the air race family that brings this thing together and comes and celebrates every year, it's special and it's worth saving. So, you know, we felt very convicted that we needed to try to carry it on. So when we announced that it was going to be ending, we also announced that we were going to be conducting a search for a new site. And the shocking thing was, within 24 hours, I think we had about 10 or 12.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah, or municipalities or locations, airports, whatever, reach out to us expressing interest. So between then and, so that was in mid-March, between then and late May when we released the RFP officially, we had 38 inquiries from different airports around the country.
Okay, so any special, can we get any news scoop on what what's it going to be, or even the final 3 or short list?
So I can't give the short list. We're not actually broadcasting the list, but I can tell you kind of how the process has worked since then.
Yeah.
So we went from those 38, we sent them the RFP, and then we released it for anybody else who was interested as well. We ended up doing 2 bidders conferences, one in June, one in July, and we had about a dozen different airports represented there. So once they saw the RFP, some went, oh, no, we can't do this. But there were about a dozen that looked at it and said, you know what, I think we can do this. So they came to those couple of bidders conferences. We had a great time talking to them, went through in a lot of detail. It was a full day long of meeting and presentations and really filling them in and kind of saying, look, this is what it is. We don't want to hide anything from them because it's a big deal and it takes a lot to put it on. Out of that, we actually now have in our hands 6 full bid proposals for us. So we're really excited. Once we get through this event.
Right. Have you been distracted from being able to pick your next one? Is something going on?
Yeah, I got a little something going on here, and it's pretty amazing. The outpouring of support for this event has been incredible. Like, we knew there would be support. We knew there'd be a lot of interest, but it's been way beyond anything we could have imagined. So that's been incredible, and that's why we're kind of at that place where this is our focus right now. Once this event's done and we move on, then we'll start looking at what's the future going to hold, what's the next location going to be, and then start looking at dates and get everything going.
You said 38 original, and then once they opened up the actual the fine print, that they're we can't do that, and you went down to 12 that could do that.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that the ones who couldn't do it couldn't do? Why couldn't they do it?
Well, if we start at kind of the big items, right? There's
Right.
big pieces that are needed, and
You
then
need
you get into down into the details for some of the other stuff. But space is obviously a huge one. We have our fastest course is an 8-mile course. It's an 8-mile oval. So overall, between everything that we do, it's roughly 5,000 acres that are needed. And you obviously can't have residences under it. You can't have occupied businesses
So the small
under it.
municipal airport just couldn't quite pull that off.
If they're surrounded by houses everywhere,
Right.
yeah, it doesn't really work.
I guess if they're out in the middle of nowhere, they probably could.
They might have that piece, but then from an economic standpoint, this thing draws tens of thousands of people from all over the world.
You got to have the infrastructure, the
Right.
hotels, everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got to have hotels, you have to have restaurants, you have to have shopping and entertainment and things for people to do while they're out here. So those are 2 of the big pieces. Yeah, it's important to have 2 runways, because if the winds make it to where you can't take off from one and you don't have an alternative runway, you can't take
You're
off.
hosed, yeah.
Yeah, so here, Stead is perfect as far as all those items go. And then you have to have ramp side facilities as well. It's really important to have hangar space and have a ton of finished ramp space and FBO on site. So there's a lot of big factors that you kind of start with, and you go, okay, do they have the things that are, non-negotiable? You have to have them, otherwise you can't have this event.
Right.
And then from there, you move on to some of the other details. So I think a lot of those
Very
airports looked at that and maybe went, oh, we'd love to do this, but maybe we can't.
Okay, so down to 6, and without giving anything away, is it pretty much across the country, or is it pretty much located West Coast? The 6?
All of the 6 that are bidding to become the permanent home of the big event, the National Championship Air Races, are in the western half of the United States.
Okay.
I can give you that much information.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so
But
stay west.
Yeah. And, one of the things we wanted to do for a long time is create sort of a circuit to where maybe we have some smaller
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
You just said the big event, so
Right.
are there small events?
Exactly. I teased my next little talk here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've looked at doing some, 1 or 2 or not 1, but 2 or 3 class events at different locations to create kind of a road to, well, back then we were calling it a road to Reno. So it'll be a road to the National Championship Air Races, wherever that may be. But that would be a really, really exciting thing to do too, because location-wise, if we could get something a little bit more east, it would probably be good for some of the warbirds that have to travel all the way across the country to get here.
It probably opens up the competition, and a lot of people who maybe didn't consider going to the one big event, Reno, competing in it, and want to do something like that, now they can kind of get some training, they can get some experience on the circuit.
Absolutely.
Makes
It
a lot
gets
of
them a
sense.
chance. It gets some of the planes that maybe, like in the sport class, for example, they're huge.
Yeah.
We can't even accommodate every registered racer that they have. So we have, I think, 32 competing, and I think 4 backups on site here. And I think their class size is somewhere between 60 and 70. So they could easily do some other events around the country. And then biplanes and formulas can certainly do that. T6s, Stoll Drag is doing it on their own for single class events, but we'd love to have them and some of the other classes kind of in here together working,
Nice.
doing some other events together.
Okay, the lead up into this last Reno, I saw Las Vegas announced, and my initial thing was, oh, so they're moving to Las Vegas, but that's not the case.
It's not the case. That announcement has absolutely nothing to do with the Reno Air Racing Association and the National Championship Air Races. We have zero affiliation with the person who did that.
Okay, so that's not you guys.
Correct.
All right, so the future looks bright. So it's not the death of air racing.
No.
If anything, it's a new birth with circuits and all sorts of things. So that's amazing.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
Tony, thanks for taking your time out of a busy deal. You guys
Yeah.
are going to have record attendance and everything else here. That's already kind of been set. So thanks for taking time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here and appreciate the time to talk about this incredible event.
And thank you guys for watching. Don't forget our sponsors like Flying Eyes, where you can go to flyingeyesoptics.com. Use our discount code, taking off, all caps, one word, for 10% off. Also, 67 Designs, 67D.com, the best camera tablet mounts for your plane or car. And also Z-Vision, brightest landing and taxi lights. Marshall Protective Service, personal protection elevated. And Colton Mortgage, Colton Taking Off if you need that residential mortgage. And Jerry Clemens will save you money on your insurance at clemensinsurance.net. Thank you guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you guys next time on Taking Off.